Okay. So, hello everybody. I wanted to talk about this topic, which I don't know if some of you can see on your screen. It says never peace. And this is based on the idea. I have had two ideas basically going on in my head for a while now. One of them has to do with the idea of conflict, war, right? How we're in 2024 and we still seem to be fighting, right? People still seem to be basically having wars and everything, right? And the other idea is the idea of food, right? I'm that type of like weird person that sits out in public and just kind of has weird thoughts sometimes. I was at a restaurant. I've been to many restaurants lately, and I just kind of sit there, like looking at people and or thinking about what we're doing, right? And I come to this conclusion that like eating's weird. Eating is a very private thing because ultimately what it's doing, eating food, it's giving us nutrients so we can continue to work, to do things, to do our activities, right? Hello everybody that's joining. I'm talking about food and fighting and how I think that basically I'm going to make the argument that I think it's because of people that and our necessity to eat that we're basically never going to have a peaceful world. Like that's my rationale or that's my explanation as to why I think people cannot live peacefully, right? We cannot live peacefully because we need to eat, right? Now, I think there's a human evolution of aggression, of conflict, and of competition for resources embedded deep within us. If you see, a lot of times people fight because of lack of resources, right? Or distribution of resources. I know that you can argue also and say, well, aggression, not everybody is embedded with aggression. Aggression can sometimes come from, the environment, from your parents. You learn it from your family members and, or your environment may be stressful. And that is why you are going to be aggressive, not because it's in your genetics or in your evolution, right? But because you learn it from the people in your life, right? That's what makes you ultimately aggressive. And like I asked ChatGPT about this, and ChatGPT says it's complex, so it has multiple factors, and it says that I oversimplify, and I think I do oversimplify a lot of times, but I think oversimplification also helps us to engage or to start engaging in the conversation or the topic, right? So, what happens when a society doesn't have food? Like, let's just look at this idea of what is the movie Max Fury, right? And in that movie, and a lot of movies and a lot of stories talk about how society doesn't have any more water, right? So if we don't have water, if we don't have food, what's going to happen? There will be wars, right? There will be conflict. There will be civil wars. There will be revolutions, right? Let's look at the French Revolution. Why did the French Revolution happen? Because the people were hungry, right? And it may seem like a stupid example, but like an example right now that I'm seeing, especially with the show House of the Dragon, if any of you are watching it on HBO, there's like a rebellion about to happen because the people in the city in King's Landing don't have food, right? So if you don't have food, what happens? People go to war, right? I think there's something more psychological, more deeper going on with food and the relationship between food, eating, and war and conflict, right? If you don't eat today, you don't die, right? You can go 1 day or 2 days without eating, right? You'll be hungry, you'll suffer, but you're not gonna die. But if you go a couple weeks or months without eating, you'll die, right? And that's the problem. So it's like this existential problem for humans, I believe, that when we think about food, we think about dying. Like if we don't eat, eventually we will die. So I think that's where a lot of people will say, well, you're not gonna mess with my food. And that's where I think it's so and that's why I think it's so weird to eat in public. Because like just imagine you're eating in a restaurant and someone passes by your table and you kind of get defensive, right? Like, you're not going to take my food. This is my food. This is my survival, right? This is going to guarantee my survival. Now, how does it relate to aggression and conflict and war? I think it relates, first of all, because there's a defense mechanism, right? Like a physical defense mechanism, right? Like to defend your food, your resources, and to attack anybody that is going to try to steal your resources and your food, right? There's that first type of attack defense, right, ordeal that we got going on. So I think nowadays we evolved into being these type of like very defensive people, right? Because and aggressive, because we can even say, and a lot of the threats are existential, right? Like, for example, when they say there's water shortage, or in the future not everybody's gonna have enough water, it won't be long now before people start saying in the future there won't be enough food to eat, right? Like, you're gonna die basically, because right now we could be talking about water. And you could say, well, as long as I have enough water to drink, clean water, I may not take a shower or wash my clothes or my things, but I still have food and I have water to drink, so I can survive. But as soon as that starts, like as soon as your survival starts being threatened with lack of water to drink and food, people get aggressive. People will fight, because it's literally like you're threatening my life, my survival, right? So I think there's this relationship between eating and fighting, right? People eat, people fight. And my theory is this, let me know what you think. I may be wrong, but as long as humans have the necessity to eat, humans will have the necessity to fight, right? So we will not have a peaceful world because we need to eat, right? Now, I know it's like it's far-fetched, right? Like how does eating relate to fighting? I don't know. I have to really look into it. And I asked ChatGPT about this, and ChatGPT was like, well, there have been moments in history where there have been peaceful times, and there have been peaceful societies, and where cooperation. But a lot of those societies, the order is imposed. There's a rigorous order that needs to be followed in order for everybody to be cooperative and to be peaceful, right? Some examples, like some historical examples that maybe you have heard of, are Pax Romana, where supposedly when the Romans were in charge of, like, they say the world, but it was just Europe, they had peace, but they were always fighting. They were always conquering territories, and they were always fighting with the barbarians, right? And then the Pax Britannica. The Pax Britannica was supposedly when the British Empire, they went into all these other countries and colonized the countries, and there was relative peace, but I think people were more focused then on like the economies and production, right? Like mass production, which that's another topic that we could explore too. Like, how does mass production reduce our anxiety of survival, right? So we know now we can just order Uber Eats and food arrives. Someone delivers food to our house, so we don't have to worry about dying from lack of food, right? Like, we know we can eat. We don't have to go out and hunt our animals, right? Like our primitive ancestors would do in the past. But there were still some type of structure, order, right? Especially with the British Empire. That's how the education system came about, right? Now, an interesting fact here that I did not know, let me know if you guys if you guys knew this or not, Costa Rica is a country in South America. Costa Rica doesn't have a military. Costa Rica hasn't had a military since 1948, I think. It's like over 70 years that Costa Rica doesn't have a military. And they have a public police force, and they have like a coast guard for the water, but they don't have like a military. So this means that if a country invades Costa Rica, they can't defend themselves. And this got me thinking about just how many countries have militaries, right? Like just look at the United States, Russia, North Korea, right? Like all these countries, all the countries in the world have militaries. It's like, why do you have militaries if you're so, peaceful and you're all about democracy and, egalitarian societies? Do it like Costa Rica. Get rid of your military. Stop fighting, right? Why are people always fighting? That's kind of like the thing that I'm talking about here, and also how it relates to eating, right? Like there's a correlation. I don't know exactly where, but there is a correlation. I have some intuition for it, where as long as we need to eat, we will need to fight, right? And it kind of goes with that, like defending your resources type of ordeal. And yeah, just to finish off this little live session with Costa Rica, I found that to be so interesting. Like Costa Rica doesn't have a military force, but it does have a public force. There's a country in Europe too. It's between Austria and I forget. I think it's Switzerland. Between Switzerland and Austria, it's called Liechtenstein or something like that. It's very small. It's 25 kilometers. But that country also doesn't have a military. There are a couple countries in the world, like Monaco, Vatican City, that don't have a military. So if they get invaded by other nations, they are going to have to look for their neighboring countries to defend them, right? Like I think in the Vatican City, the Italian army or the French army defend them. In Costa Rica, I think Costa Rica, since it doesn't have a military, the United States would defend Costa Rica in case of an invasion into Costa Rica. So they do have like these pacts, I guess, or these agreements with other countries. But it's very interesting to see how, like, for more than 70 years, Costa Rica hasn't operated with a military, right? So yeah, that's what I thought I'd talk about in this video. I think we will never have peace because we always need to eat. And as long as we need to eat as humans, we're going to fight. We're going to defend our resources, our food, right? And we're going to attack others that have it when we don't, right? That's how revolutions get started. That's how civil wars start, right? Because like your survival is literally threatened, right? If you don't have food, you die, right? It's like the most basic thing. It's like oxygen, they say, and food, right? Specifically like glucose, for your cells, and water, right? Basic necessities that you need in order to survive. If those are threatened, you fight. And as long as we have those needs as humans, and we need to satisfy those needs, there's going to be war, right? So yeah, that's what I thought I'd talk about in this video. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, so peace.